A government shutdown looks likely after Senate Republicans and Democrats blocked each other's plans on Friday to keep the government open beyond the end of this month. It comes as many Republicans, including President Trump and Vice President Vance, prepare to travel to Arizona for Charlie Kirk's memorial service tomorrow. NPR senior political contributor Ron Elving joins us. Ron, thanks so much for being with us.
Good to be with you, Scott.
And we'll turn quite soon to the developments and divisions following the Charlie Kirk assassination. But let's begin with the basic question of funding the government. Can the Congress do it?
At this moment, a shutdown is the default scenario for the end of this month. The House has passed a stopgap spending measure and gone on recess until October. The Senate tried to match that measure yesterday, but it needed 60 votes, which meant it needed some Democrats to go along, and just one did. Most of the Democrats stood firm against this bill, which they say will be a disaster for people on Obamacare or Medicaid or relying on rural hospitals. So the stopgap failed. And unless the Senate can gather itself again and find a way forward, the fiscal year will end in 10 days without a new set of directives for spending, and much of the government will shut down.
Country, of course, is deeply divided. Divisions appear to have been hardened in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. What stood out to you this week?
The divisions and the depths of those divisions, Scott, it's not just right and left, Republican, Democrat. We're in an attitude of grievance, reactions of outrage. It's becoming all too familiar. A large portion of the country is enraged about the killing of Charlie Kirk, and another about the suspension of TV personality Jimmy Kimmel. And a third group is wondering why these two events are tearing the country apart. There are millions of Americans who don't live to argue on social media. They don't want to be at odds with their neighbors. And polls show the national mood in the wake of these events is plummeting. And that's all across the political spectrum.
President Trump applauded ABC's decision to take Jimmy Kimmel off the air indefinitely after he made comments after the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The president also said federal regulators ought to consider revoking licenses of other broadcasters who have reported or said things he believes to be critical of him. Presidents of both parties have groused about what they consider to be unfair reporting and ridicule, but have we ever seen anything like this before?
We have seen presidents sue newspapers before. They have not had much luck with that, and Trump has not either, at least so far. We have also heard presidents rail against the broadcast media. Richard Nixon in particular battled the press and the TV news. He looked for ways he could withdraw broadcast licenses owned by newspapers he considered hostile, such as the Washington Post. But of course, for every story of a brave newsroom standing up to bullying, there are many more we never hear about how newsrooms have been intimidated or constrained. And in the contemporary media landscape where we live today, with its fragmentation, it's getting harder and harder to control the narrative for anyone, especially if it's driven by individuals on social media.
And now new rules for reporters at the Pentagon.
Yeah, we're being told by a U.S. official not authorized to speak, who told Tom Bowman, or NPR, that the Pentagon will require journalists to pledge not to gather any information, including unclassified, that hasn't been authorized for release.
And tomorrow, the memorial service for Charlie Kirk. What do you think we can expect?
In a democracy, people of all political sympathies are entitled to express those feelings, and most especially to grieve their fallen heroes. For Charlie Kirk's supporters, it will be an occasion for their sense of righteous anger, and is likely to fuel their determination to pursue Kirk's ideas and agenda. And will also be an occasion for other prominent figures to identify with Kirk and try to capture some of what he had, his message, and his following as well.
NPR's Ron Elving, thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Americans are paying more for a lot of things these days, including health care, insurance, and entertainment. And in the coming weeks, NPR will explore what's behind these rising prices and how people are coping. It's part of our series, Cost of Living, the Price We Pay. Some of the most painful price hikes have been at the supermarket, and as NPR's Scott Horsley reports, that's not only affecting shoppers' wallets, but their political views.
Last month saw the biggest jump in grocery prices in almost 3 years. For Sheila Fields, who lives in Galveston, Texas, the hunt for affordable food has almost become a full-time job.
Like yesterday, we went to 3 different stores here in town, and we bought only what was a really good sale. So we got no meat at all. It's just too high.
Fields and her husband are both retired nurses, and they're worried about outliving their savings.
We're not going hungry. We just have anxiety over this, and anxiety about our kids and our grandkids. We've been through a lot of recessions. We've been through the one in the 80s, 2008, and this is the scariest we've ever been.
The Fields are in good company. A survey this summer by the Associated Press and NORC found the cost of groceries has become a major source of stress for about half of all Americans, outpacing rent, healthcare, and student debt. Rebecca White, who works at a bank in Cincinnati, says her paycheck has not kept pace with her rising grocery bills. She's scouring the back of her cupboards for food and eating a lot of spaghetti.
I try to stick to cheaper meals, which isn't always healthy. Buying frozen meals or vegetables over fresh ones. Sometimes I'll skip breakfast and then just have lunch and dinner so that I don't have to buy another meal.
The giant Kroger supermarket chain says the stress is apparent as shoppers make smaller, more frequent trips to the store, use more coupons, and opt for cheaper private label products. White says she's not optimistic about finding relief at the checkout line anytime soon.
Once the prices go up, they rarely ever come back down.
Grocery prices have jumped nearly 30% since February 2020, just before the pandemic. COVID supply shocks were compounded by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which raised food and energy prices around the world, and by avian flu, which triggered the more recent spike in egg prices. The double-digit price hikes came as a shock after decades of relatively stable grocery prices. And David Ortega, who's a food economist at Michigan State University, says shoppers are reminded of those higher prices week after week.
We all have to eat, and food is very personal. Grocery prices have become a hot-button political flashpoint over the past couple of years.
President Trump has said repeatedly shoppers' frustration with grocery prices helped put him back in the White House.
It's such an old-fashioned term, but a beautiful term, groceries. It sort of says a bag with different things in it. Groceries went through the roof, and I campaigned on that. I talked about the word groceries for a lot.
But despite Trump's promise to lower prices, the overall cost of groceries is higher now than when he was sworn in. The president's crackdown on illegal immigration, including the targeting of people who pick and process our food, could add to upward pressure on prices. Ortega notes Trump's tariffs are also contributing to higher prices for imported staples like bananas and coffee.
Tariffs simply are a tax on imported goods. So that raises the costs, and ultimately consumers see that at the grocery store.
Coffee prices have jumped more than 20% in the last year. While some of that is due to weather in coffee-growing countries like Brazil and Vietnam, Trump's double-digit import taxes are not helping. Sheila Fields stocked up on coffee when the tariffs were announced. She's not sure what she'll do when that supply runs out.
I haven't bought coffee in a month, and the prices are just going up, up, up. We're down to like 1 cup in the morning, and I just hate to give that up.
Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.